So we are now live and recording. So again, good morning, everyone. We ask if there are times when you do share out, because this is recorded, to try and make sure that you don't mention a specific district or that kind of thing, because we want this to be accessible to all. And so this morning, we're going to start with Gail Kregel, who is a teacher who Heidi and I have had the pleasure to work with the last several weeks with a student. And we saw her doing some really neat things with the Google Slides and worksheets with her student. So we have asked her to share. So Gail, I am going to turn it over to you, and then you can share your screen. And I'm going to mute my video for now.
Sounds good. Thank you, Stacy. Yes, thank you for inviting me to speak today, and I hope that I can share some of the tips and tricks that I've learned. It's definitely been a challenging year, to say the least. And so, like you all said, we've had to learn how to pivot to virtual, and it took a lot of trial and error to find what works. But I just want to go through those things that I've learned with you today. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. Okay, so I am by no means an expert, and I can't even really take credit for this, but I did create a Bitmoji classroom that I learned from, I saw it in one of my Facebook teaching groups. And so I just want to show you how I use that with my students. So this is, I do it in Google Slides, and I have this all set up for a demo for us today. So this is, I'll give you an overview. This is my Google Slides presentation, my Bitmoji classroom. And the really cool thing about this is that we can make anything clickable and interactive. So it's a nice tool to be able to keep it consistent for my student. And I found that I can do pretty much almost anything that I do with that student in person. I can find a way to make it work in my Bitmoji classroom. So to get started, I'm not sure if you are familiar how to make a Bitmoji classroom, but that's where I'll start today. And there may be more than one way to do this, but this is just the way I do it. So don't feel like you need to do it this way. But to get started, you would just want to make, start a slide presentation. And I'm just going to add, I'm going to just add a new slide here, a blank one. And then we want it blank like this. And then what I would want to do is we want to add our classroom elements. So I would go to Insert and go to Image, and then I search the web. You could also have things saved on your computer that would work too. But I usually start with a floor. So I, search for a floor and then, kind of look to see what options there are. This one looks like it is a good one, so I'll go ahead and insert that. And then you want to make it to size, stretch it out. And then if you want to add like I have a wall, you can just do an overlay of, you could do a shape, and then you could select the rectangle and then drag that and make it any color if you wanted. This one looks like it kind of has a wall, so I'm okay with that. The next thing we want to do is add those elements that make it look like our classroom. So in my example here, I have a desk and a poster and some plants and things. So to do that, I found that if you go to Insert Image from this slide, it doesn't give me the best search results. So what I like to do is actually go into a new Google tab and type in whatever it is I'm looking for. So I'll put in desk, and then I go to images, and then I just look through and I try to find one that is facing straight on. So like this one is a good one, I think. So I am just going to hit copy. And now, because we don't want this white background in our classroom, right, we have to remove the background. So the best way to do that is we go to this really cool website. It's just remove.bg upload or /upload, and we paste that, we paste that into this website. Now it's going to remove that background, And when I click download, it'll save it. So now I go back to my slide, I hit image, upload from computer, and now I can do a search to find what, and there's my desk. So then you can drag it wherever you want. You can do this with anything, so you can really make it as personable as you would like. You could add a bookshelf, you could add, like I said, I added plants, I added things on my desk to make it like the more realistic for the things that I have. And then I also added this whiteboard here. So again, I just did a Google search for whiteboard. This came up. And then to get the text on, I just did insert text box and then laid that over. And then once you have your classroom set up how you want it, you'll want to put your Bitmoji in there. So you will have to download the extension for Chrome. And once you do that, you would go to the app store and then get the Bitmoji extension, and it would show up here in your shortcuts up here. So to put a Bitmoji person in, we don't want images like this, right? That have all these funny, like meme type images. We just want us posing. So what we do is we type in pose. And what that does is it brings our Bitmoji up and we have all these simple poses without all of that clutter in the background. So that's a good one. I will right click and then copy, and then you can paste that right in there. And then you just want to resize it, of course. So some days I like to make myself a little taller. Okay, so that's pretty much the basics of making a Bitmoji classroom. And like I said, the cool thing about it is you can make it as personable as you want. The next thing I would do to make it easy is I would just duplicate this slide for as many slides as I would need. And then the only thing that I change between slides is my Bitmoji. So I just change it up a little bit between, the different poses. So it's more interactive, or I mean, not interactive, I guess engaging for the student. You got to mix it up a little bit. Okay, so that is how you do the Bitmoji classroom. Now, how I use my Bitmoji classroom with the student, I'm just going to get rid of this one because I don't need that. But what I typically do is, and I do it the same way, regardless of if I'm in person. Sometimes I see my student face to face, and sometimes I see them virtually. But I found that this is a really seamless way to make it consistent for my student. And it also allows me to cut back on the tangible materials that we're using, like manipulatives and things. So we're not sharing, the same manipulatives, and it's just another mitigation tactic, right? So that we're not, sharing germs and whatever. So when I meet with my student, I always start with this slide. And I would just present it, and, it says, you can have it, like I said, you can have it say whatever you want, but this is just how I start it. And then I always like to start with a checklist for that day. So we just want to make sure we're starting off on the right foot. And again, it gives the student a very sequential list of what we need to have happen in order to be successful for our meet. So they have their hearing aids on, they have their DM plugged in, it's quiet, they have their captions on, and then they have their materials ready. And then we can do a listening check. The neat thing about Google Slides is we can make anything a clickable link. It can be a clickable picture, an image, or clickable text. So if you notice this is blue here, that's because I made this, I inserted a link. So this is going to take us to our Ling sound check. And I will show you how I did this as well. Okay, so for my student then, to do the Ling sound check, I would bring him to this slide, and then I would do the sound check. And then he's going to want to move these cards to the sound that he hears. Now he needs control of my mouse, and I was trying to find a way to give him control of my computer from the virtual, virtually. And the best way that I found, I know that Zoom does do a mouse control feature, but it didn't work with the Chromebook. So my student has a Chromebook, and for whatever reason, that feature is not, it doesn't work with Chrome. So, or Chromebook. And I use Google Meet with my students. And so a way to get around this is we have to download another extension, and it's the Chrome Remote Desktop. And once you download that extension, it's added up here in your shortcut icons. So what I do when I meet with my student is I click on this, and it takes me to this website. And then I copy this and paste it and put that in the Google Meet chat. Okay, so you copy it, paste it, put it in the Google Meet chat, and then you want to add the word session, and then you want to put a /, and then right here on Get Support, you hit Generate Code. This is going to make a special code that's only active for about 5 minutes, but you copy this, and then you would paste it. You would copy and paste this whole URL then into that Google Meet chat. You send it to your student, then your student will click on this, and then it will prompt something up on your computer screen, and it will say something like, do you want to share your computer with someone? And then it says no, but it says, and then the other option is share. So you hit share, and what that does then is it gives your student access to your computer. So now they can use your mouse and they can use your keyboard on their end, which is really neat. So then once we have done that, now we can go back and do that Ling sound check. So this is where I would, cover my mouth and make the sounds, and then he or she would drag each picture to its correct sound. And I can show you how I linked it to this slide. Okay, so I go back up to where it said the checklist, and how you link it is you just, you want to select it. Whoops, I don't know what I did there. Okay, whoa. Okay, so you want to select it, and then you go to this icon. So you can insert link here. You can go to insert link down at the bottom. I think you can right click as well. So I'm going to just say I want to insert link. Then what it says is it'll ask us what text we want displayed. And then we have the option of choosing a website. We could put a link in here, or we can link it to a slide in the presentation. So my Ling sound check, I believe, was on slide 19. So then I just want to select slide 19 and then hit apply. Okay, so now when you're in the present mode, you click on this, it'll bring me right to this slide that I want. Now my student can't move the cards in the present mode, so I have to back out of that, but now they can, move the cards wherever they hear. And then again, I put a clickable link on the bottom. So to do that, I just put a shape. I made a shape, colored it green, added the text that I wanted, and then again, I just clicked link, and I wanted it to go to my next slide, which is slide 4. So then it would go to my next slide. So after we do our checklist and we do our listening check, I always like to start with, goals and objectives and share my learning targets with my student. Again, it just gives them a clear understanding of the sequence that we're going to be doing for that lesson, and it gives them kind of a roadmap of what skills we're working on. So we go through this, and then we just start with the activities. So I label everything pretty clearly for my student, and we usually start with rereading a familiar book to build fluency, but it really, depends on the student and what their needs are. So, um, and you'll notice too, like I will say this, sometimes what I like to do is I never delete a slide. So I just keep adding, I have like totally random slides in here, and that's okay because um, I want to make it easy for myself, right? We all have so much to do. We don't want to have to reinvent the wheel every time. So depending on what I'm working on with that student that day, I might just insert a slide here, and then you can move it around wherever you want. So I noticed I didn't have an activity number 2 because maybe that day I wasn't doing an activity 2 that I typically do. So you just want to make sure you're watching, this would be number 2 then, and so on. But I have just a variety of slides, and then I can link them to however I want, if that makes sense. Okay, now I want to show you another trick that I was able to do. So I work on reading with my student a lot of the time, and so we always start with reading for fluency to build that confidence and build that stamina. And then if we're getting into a new story, I always like to introduce the vocabulary. So to do that, face to face, we would usually do like a memory game or some sort of a game using a manipulative, but we had to figure out a way to do that virtually. So again, I found, a website that let me do that, and I can I put a clickable link here. So this was just insert shape. You pick the shape that you want, and then you put the text in, and you can copy and paste that website. When you click on this brings me to a website. This is a pretty neat tool. This website is called EducaPlay. It's a free website. You don't have to pay. You can choose to pay if you want, but I just use, I like the free version, works fine for me. And what this is a pretty cool tool, because what it does is it has all of these different games that you can make for your student. It's totally customizable. So they have riddles and crosswords and fill in the blank and matchmaking or matching, all kinds of fun games that you can make. I usually pick this memory game, and then, you always want to, it makes you give it a title. So I'll pick this, and then you have to give it a description. Um, and then it wants you to pick like a classification. Okay, then you go to next. The cool thing about EducaPlay is that it's a community-based approach. So anything that you make, you can share with other teachers. And so, for instance, you could even go up here and search for whatever you, like this says Rivers of Europe, okay? And then it would find all the activities that other teachers have made regarding Rivers of Europe. For me and my students, and probably yours too, everything is so individualized that probably wouldn't work for me. So I usually make my own, but and other teachers don't usually use them, but I lost my train of thought. Okay, so coming back to this, how we make a memory game this is kind of the general setup of the game. So I always go in here and edit. I don't like to have a time limit. Number of attempts, I usually like to give them quite a few attempts. I do want to hide the pictures because it's a memory game, and then you can pick the size card that you want. Okay, now here comes the fun part. So now we want to add some matches. There's an A card and a B card. So for the A card, I've just put in whatever text, like vocabulary. So for instance, if I want to teach the word sled, I would type in the word sled. You click next, and now it's going to bring me over to the B card. So for B card, for the match, I usually like to do a picture. so that they can pair the English word with the picture. I mean, you could also use a picture of a sign for that word or whatnot, but to put a picture in, we just want to click this picture icon, and then it'll ask us to choose a file. So then I think I saved it on my desktop. Yeah, so here's a sled. Okay, and then sometimes you have to resize it. Sometimes the size is a little bit off, but we usually can make it work. We want to hit finish, and then it will have that pair for us. Okay, and then let's do another one, jam. We want to learn the word jam, so we put that text in, and now I want to add my picture of jam. And then hit finish. And if you'll notice too, over here, this is a gauge. In order for us to publish this game to be accessible for other teachers, and like I said, I have not found it to be super helpful for other teachers because it's so specific to my student needs. But in order for it to be published, it needs to have a score of, I think, 80 or above. And as you add more matches and as you add more details to the game, they think it's going to be more valuable for other teachers. So that will increase the score. So right now, it's telling me I can't publish it because it's just not of high quality enough that other teachers would find it helpful. But if I go in and we add one more, let's say doll, for instance, and then I want to add my picture. Hit finish. Okay, so now my score just went up a little bit, right? I typically like to do, between 5 and 10 matches, but then we can, and this is all, the premium features, but like I said, I don't pay for that. And then it always wants you to give a label, so a tag, so that other teachers can find it. So I might put in vocab, I might put in ELL, because I have an English language student, and now my score is going up a little bit. So I think it added that, did it? Oh yeah, it did twice. Okay. So again, so now, okay, I don't remember what score you need to be able to publish it, but it is going to allow me to publish it. I must have added enough detail. Obviously the more green that the gauge is in the green, that's good. But anyway, now if I want to publish the activity, it would be available for other teachers. If you just want to use it with your student and not publish it, that's fine too, but you would just go to preview then, and then when you go to play the game, now this is what it looks like. So you find okay, first try, I got it. And again, this is where you would give your mouse control. Oh, we got first position. So you can give your mouse control to your students, and we can take turns back and forth. So that is a cool website that I found to work on vocabulary. And again, it's not just matching and memory matching. They have all kinds of different games that you can make. Okay, so then I would typically, when we're done with that, we would come back to my Bitmoji classroom and then continue with our activities. So for this activity, sequencing the story, again, I make a clickable link and it takes me to, so this one's going to Teachers Pay Teachers. So any website that you want it to link to, you would just copy and paste that into the link. So like, I can show you just one more time. So you just go to that link button and then you copy and paste, the website that you want it to go to. And like I said, I never delete any slides. So maybe this day I don't want to work on sequencing the activity. So that's where I would just, move it down wherever I need to move it, just out of the way. My student never sees all these slides. So to me, it doesn't matter how messy it is, or, if there's 100 slides, to me, that doesn't matter. So I just leave everything there, and that way I don't have to delete anything. And then, like, for example, here's some sound boxes that I made. So one of my activities that I did one day was, maybe it was activity number whatever, and then it was um, spelling or listening to sounds and words, and then I would have it link to that activity, to that slide, and now my student can move move these. And as we say the word doll, they can move those letters. And I will show you. I don't know if you guys use reading milestones or not, or any sort of reading curriculum, but how I made a digital version. I just scan it and then email it to myself, and then I just copy it and paste it into this. And I do 2 pages, so it's kind of like you're opening the book. But you could do this with any sort of, reading material or anything that you're working on. And again, there I have the continue button. So when you're in the present mode, and I do find you have to like move some of this stuff out of the way, but you hit continue and then it goes, to the next activity that I have it linked to. And then we always end up, then, I always make sure like this is my last slide. So great job. You did awesome. We'll see you next time. So those are just some of the tips and tricks that I have found. And like I said, I'm sure there's a million ways to do all of these things. These are just some of the things that I've found to be helpful with working with my student. And whether I'm in person, face to face, or virtual, this is a very seamless way that I can go between those 2 environments. And it's very consistent for my student. And I think that helps with their overall comprehension. And it makes it very seamless, which is nice. Because I honestly, since the beginning of the year, I think I've had to quarantine 3 different times, because I have kids in school and they've had to stay home. So I have to stay home with them. It was really, really hard to get some traction going because I was in and out and in and out. And this has been very, very useful to counteract that change in environment. So that's what I have for you. I would be happy to answer any questions that you have, or give you more specifics on anything. If I went through something too quickly, we can go over it, in more detail if you want, but I will hand it back over to Stacy.
Okay, so if you have a question right now for Gail, could you please type that in the chat, and then we will share those with her, and she'll be able to answer for you. So right now, it looks like we don't have questions, Gail. So I just want to say thank you for sharing, because I know sometimes for folks, it's just getting that first little introduction.
Sure.
So those of you who are joining us know what we'll do when we're done today is we will share some of Gail's slides, and then all of the links that she had for you. We will put that on Canvas so that you can access them more easily and give them a try yourself. We have some comments here actually. So Becky wants to know, Gail, the Chrome remote desktop gives the student control for only 5 minutes, or can you set that longer?
So that code is what's good for 5 minutes. So sometimes I have found, like, I go to generate the code before I meet with my student, and then by the time they click on the link, then it just makes you get a new code. So it's the control itself doesn't have a 5-minute limit. It's just this code expires after 5 minutes. I will say though, sometimes my student and I have discovered that if we go too long between like him using the his mouse or whatever controlling my screen, like let's say we do the Ling check and he has control of my mouse, and then we're doing something for a span of time where he's not using my mouse, I then he'll come sometimes indicate like, oh, it stopped working. Then we just go back and redo it. I think sometimes too, I've noticed, and it's possible that I just am missing it, but it'll say like, do you want to continue sharing? Because it almost goes to sleep. It seems like it almost goes to sleep and wants to, thinks you're not there or whatnot. And you want to hit continue. Sometimes I think I probably miss that because it just pops up and then it's gone. But worst case scenario is it stops working in the middle of a lesson, and then you just, have to do that copy and paste trick again. So that's a good question.
So there's another comment from Lucy saying, thank you. I love using Google Slides for activities too. And Becky says, thank you. I was wondering, Gail, could you explain kind of how you do your virtual setup? So is it just using the Google Meets so then you can see him, or can you tell people what that looks like a little bit, what you're using for
Yeah,
technology?
absolutely. So I have my um, Google Slides all set up, and then and so we see each other every day, and I was tired of having to email him a link every single time that we would meet. I couldn't figure out a good way to set up a permanent URL for him to click on. I tried making one in Google Classroom, and maybe because we have different email domains or whatnot, it just wasn't working. So for me, the best way to do that is I went to my Google Calendar, and then what you do is you would want to create an event, and you give it a title. So I would say like DHH with your student's name or whatnot. You want to make an event, and then you want to make it um, an all day thing. So you would click this, and then you want to make it all day. Now obviously it's not going to be all day, and it's not going to be every day, but what this does is it will make a permanent URL, and then you want to add the video conferencing, and you can pick between Google Meet or a Zoom. I prefer Google Meet. It just seems like it's more user friendly. And then you would want to add, your guest or whatnot, your student. And then when you hit save, now what that does is it creates, I don't know where it saved it though, but what it does is it creates, oh, yep, right here. So and then, you want to repeat all day every day. So then this creates a permanent URL. If I don't know why it didn't, all day, does not repeat. Okay, so then you want to repeat every day. You could do, or every weekday, that would be fine too. So now it should be there when I click like next week, Monday. Yep, so here it is, DHH with Mrs. Kregel, DHH with Mrs. Kregel, so on and so forth. So then when it's time for me and my student to log on, we just go to, he goes to his Google Calendar, I go to mine, and I just click on that, and then it'll both bring us into the same Google Meet session. So that's how I do that. So then when we log on, I always have my microphone here so he can hear me better. Then when I go into present mode, now I can't see him anymore, which I was like, okay, how do I see it? Like, if he's engaged, and how can I, because once I present, this is taking up my whole screen. So a way around that is I always have my iPad next to me, and I log in to that meeting as a third person. So I basically am logged in on my laptop, and I'm logged into Google Meet. I join the Google Meet on my iPad. Now I want to make sure that I am muted on my iPad, and I also turn my camera off so that he doesn't see me from like this weird angle. Then they're showing the 3 participants. It's me on my laptop, and then my student. Now I can pin him, and then I see him on my iPad. So I can have my whole screen dedicated to my presentation and my lesson, and then I can see him to make sure that he's engaged and following along. And if he looks lost, or he is just, sometimes he'll have his head down because he needs a little bit of a listening break. So I found that to be useful. Again, I'm not sure if there's an easier way to do it or a better way to do it. I know there's some things you can do with split screen, but this is what worked for me. So any other questions?
Thank you for that,
Yeah.
Gail. And then Lucy also said, kind of where you got to is that you can make that recurring event in Google Meets, and that's a way to get the same URL, or
Yeah.
in the same way that we set repeats for professional development or whatever, you can set up the same link to use over and over. So has anyone else have any questions for Gail? Okay, well, I think she's going to hang out with us for a while. So if you think of something,
Yeah.
you can put it in the chat. And Gail, if you have to go, we can always get you those questions after we're done today. So we are going to switch gears here a little bit.
I will stop sharing my screen in just a second. I'm just
Okay, yep,
okay,
just get
yep.
set up and we'll
There we
keep
go.
moving
Okay.
ahead. There we go. So Heidi and I wanted to just, we made a couple slides and we will put these in Canvas, but I'm going to go ahead and share my screen just so we have kind of a common visual. And let's see if I can pick the right one today, because like Gail said, everything disappears when you go to present mode. So I cannot see what you guys see. Can you see my slides? Did I lose my chat and everything? Heidi,
Yeah,
can you see the?
They're just not in present
Okay,
mode,
thank
but
you.
yes, you have them up.
Okay, yeah, I didn't hit present mode yet because then even more stuff disappears. We just wanted to let you know, we had already put a couple of the things that Gail mentioned in here. And so those links will be here. The reading milestones, we found the you have to have a code, but what we wanted you guys to take home from this is if your district is using a particular curriculum, is to see if they have that online access or online tools, because a lot of different reading curriculums have now made virtual tools. And Gail had mentioned teachers pay teachers. There is a free section in there. So again, we know everybody's always looking for those free tools, and how do you access those? So teachers pay teachers is kind of the same thing as the website that Gail had shared, is a way to get activities and things on different topics. And there are free and there are paid. And then this DPI teacher resources is actually through the WISE suite. There is a whole section of resources and things to explore in your free time, because I'm sure everybody has a lot of that right now. We just wanted to remind folks of some of our events and things that are coming up. So if you hadn't joined us before, so you can always get updates on outreach activities or even community activities through our website calendar. But right now, what we have going on is our student leadership groups. So we have the first Tuesday of the month, we do a middle school group, and the third third Tuesday of the month is a high school group. And Scott Kendorski and I are just working with students about, what does it mean to be a leader? What does it mean to join an organization or those kinds of things? So please help us promote that. We'd like to get some more students involved with that. We do have our ongoing parent meet and greets, which is the second Thursday. And so if you guys are kind of seeing a theme here, we're trying to keep events on the same day of the month so that you don't have to be like watching or figuring out where we put it. So we're trying to stay consistent that way. For our monthly professional development, like you're joining us this morning, we do not have a meeting in December because it lined up with our co-plan to co-serve information. So we will, I'll turn that over to Heidi in just a second, and she'll tell you a little bit more about that. And then we have a couple questions for you about going forward. We'd like your input. So Heidi, I am going to turn it over to you about the co-plan co-serve, where we're at.
Yeah, so we're collaborating with CISA 7, and they have put together with Stacy and I a co-plan to co-serve presentation that is geared specifically for deaf and hard of hearing professionals. So we've been talking about, especially in the world of virtual and in oftentimes the world of itinerant, even itinerant within a school district, that sometimes there is difficulty just in being able to co-plan with other deaf ed professionals. You have your educational audiologists, your educational interpreters, your teachers for the deaf and hard of hearing. Sometimes they don't even have the opportunity to sit down together and co-plan to co-serve, let alone branch out to co-plan to co-serve with the regular ed teachers. So our hope is with this series, it's a series of trainings. There's 6 of them total, spread out over the course of the school year. We tried to spread it out like every 6 weeks, from 8 to 10, always on a Friday morning. As Stacy said, we tried to keep it consistent so people could plan for that. And we had our first one October 30th. So our next one's coming up in December. And what the presenter has said, so Marcy from CISA 7 is the one that is leading it and facilitating it. And she said, if anybody still wanted to join for the second one, they could still join the series, even though they missed the first one. But the second one's kind of the cutoff. So if you can't come for the second one, then she's really not going to open it for the rest of them, because each one builds on the next one. You can join as an individual, you can join as a team, you can have your team of deaf ed professionals, or you can have your team of regular ed professionals, or speech and language pathologists. We don't care like who the group is, just hopefully the people are serving a student with hearing loss in that group. This is no cost for individuals to participate. So I am going to put in the chat, you just have to email Nancy directly at CISA 7 because registration is closed. But if you email her directly, she will add you to the registration. And I can make sure to add the link from our event if you want to see sort of what that flyer looks like in case you missed it. So if anyone has any questions, you can put it in chat. A few of the people that are on here, I know that we've seen you in the training series, and we appreciate you for being there and helping us realize our vision for deaf and hard of hearing. So I think that covers it, unless you can think of anything else, Stacy.
Nope, I think that's good, Heidi. We have a couple things people asked if Gail could share her email. So it's here in the chat. So you have that if you have more questions for her. We know she would be welcome to, answer those for you. We have just a couple other things here that we wanted to share with you. So, as all things DPI, they are forever releasing new information, and it's coming pretty fast and furious right now. So we put some links in here, and we will make sure that you have the slides. So one of the topics that's been coming up is related to virtual assessments. And so, we know some people are completely virtual. We know some people are doing some kind of hybrid, and it's a moving target, so it's always changing. But if you are particularly looking for something related to virtual assessments, and Heidi and I have been kind of tossing this around as maybe that's the topic for January, is that in the DPI special ed FAQ, there's a section that's actually related to, should you do assessments virtually, how does that change? If you're using a formal assessment, how does that change the validity and those kinds of things? So there are some specific questions related to that in the special ed FAQ. And later in the resources, we have the link to that document as well. So that was updated recently again in October. There is a whole section on the DPI website related to virtual IEPs. So kind of how to facilitate with that with families, making sure that they are a quality IEP. And then we put a bunch of links in here for statewide assessments. As we know, last year they didn't happen. As of right now, November 2020, they are scheduled to happen. DPI has not gotten waivers to be released from the federal requirement of doing that. So right now they are putting out their usual guidance in the same way that they would every year. So we just put a couple more links in here. The one in particular is the forward. We didn't do that last year, so that we won't have data for that, but they did release the accommodations information booklet. I mean, it's pretty thick. It's probably a good 30-40 pages, but if you're gearing up, thinking ahead to, if we do forward this year, those updated accommodations are available. But just know that DPI is working on that, but they have not made a decision as to if it will be postponed, not happen, whatever. So we'll keep you up to date as we learn more about that. Just giving you a few dates. So Heidi and I have a few favorites that we're always watching for, because they're kind of those ongoing updates from DPI, and those two. So I was already talking about that FAQ. That's this document, extended school closure due to COVID. So again, this one was actually updated 2 or 3 times in October. But if you go to this document, every question is dated, because it started out as like a 4-page document, and I think it's now up to 16 pages. So as they answer questions to the field, they are all going in that FAQ. So if you have only one document that you go to, that's the special ed FAQ. And then the COVID teleservice considerations, that one was updated in October as well. And just a few others. These infection control documents, these are put out by the school nurse, but we just wanted you to know these are kind of more of a general school policy and information. So if you're looking for updates related to that, both of those documents were updated in October. And then now I'm going to stop sharing, but I'm going to turn it back to Heidi. So she wanted to check in on a few things with folks.
Now, if I could just remember what I wanted to know, I'm going to go rogue here, which is pretty typical of me on outreach. So Julie, you're right in the middle of my screen. So if you have control of my mute button, you may want to have that. No, I don't think I'll say anything too drastic. So as I was sitting here thinking, I do that sometimes, it even surprises me, that outreach is always sort of like trying to plan, but we always sort of try to guess maybe what teachers would want or what teachers would like, or what can we do to support you guys. And so like right now there's sort of 2 things on our plate that are relatively new. And one of them is, one of the professionals has asked, I sometimes do things because it just feels like the right thing to do, but I don't really have best practice to back it up. And I would love to sort of have conversations around best practices and where can we find those resources for best practices, so we can share them with administrators, or we can share them with parents, or we can share them with other teachers. And one thing that I sort of always have wanted to do was sort of have a share out like that. So if people find a resource and then we can share it among deaf ed professionals, everybody sort of looks over it and then comes together and has a conversation around it. Like that's one of the ideas that I have, but I don't really quite know what teachers want. So I would invite people, you know, to directly connect with me or Stacy and say, hey, I love that idea. Let's move forward. I want to be part of it. Another idea that we're in the process of, actually Mary, our wonderful interpreter, came up with it. And so we talked about doing one right now. It's called Sign for the Seasons. And literally I just put in the paperwork for it. And so what we thought we could do is, you know, provide an opportunity for families and professionals. And I don't even think it has to be for deaf and hard of hearing. I can see it even for friends and families of those kids that are in classrooms with our students who are deaf and hard of hearing. And we want to do signs for the season, where maybe even we send out and ask professionals and families to have their kids, we'll give them a vocabulary word and have the kid themselves sign it. And then we put together sort of this video. So it looks like signing time a little bit, I think, so that the kids are the ones that are like, you know, SKI, ski, and then it'll flip to another kid, and then another kid, you know, is SNOW, snow. So I'm looking at taking Mary's idea and to sort of running with it a little bit. And so again, I don't know if that is something that the deaf ed professionals feel is even a need or even a want. So if you guys have ideas or you want to co-plan with me or co-plan with Stacy or co-plan with anybody on the outreach team, we invite you to say, hey, I'd love to be involved in an activity. Let me know what you guys are planning and see if I can help support that. So I'm just putting that out there just to give you a little more work. So Stacy, was there anything else that specifically did you, I was looking at Nancy Schlee's information. So I wasn't sure if you said this or not, but like with the DLM, I talked to Iris Jacobson at the DPI earlier this week because a question came in from one of our teachers. And right now, DPI is in conversations about whether or not these standardized assessments will be administered virtually. They're sort of like hedging, especially with the DLM, they're kind of hedging toward advising that it won't be done virtually, that those will have to be done in person. So just sort of, we're going to keep you guys updated as we're updated, but that's just sort of a seed in the back of your head that DPI is right now in conversations about whether or not those statewide assessments and those mandated assessments are going to be done, or if they're going to allow them to be done virtually, or if they need to be done in person.
Yep. So Heidi, the last thing we had in our information was about checking in on folks on their self-care. So I am going to actually stop the video now because this is more just a personal information. So we're going to stop our recording.